Top of the morning, Dan and Amy has the first domino fell. Can't speak.
Got a case of the Amy's, huh?
A bit. Apparently, I guess I'm so enthusiastic about what Germany is reportedly doing. Reuters reporting Germany has drawn up a list of steps, including mandatory mask wearing in public, limits on
Dan.
gatherings, and rapid tracing of infection chains to enable a phased return to normal life after its lockdown is set to end on April 19th.
Let's all move to Germany.
Yeah. This draft action plan compiled by its Interior Ministry, seen by Reuters today, says the measure should be enough to keep the average number of people infected by one person below one, even as public life is allowed to gradually resume. And so thinking about the United States and what Trump has telegraphed before, phased return to normalcy. Let's get antibody testing deployed to areas that are going to be at the top of the list in terms of rank order priority for opening, and those areas that, number one, are not dealing with a significant caseload, and number two, per antibody testing, don't anticipate a significant caseload. Let's start bringing people back online. What do you think?
Sounds heavenly.
We'll return to this, but now we want to check in with our friend Dr. David Kolbaba. He is the clinic director at Quest for Health, and he's also the host of Healthquest Radio, Chicago's longest-running health news and science show, which is broadcast right here, Saturdays on AM 560 from 11 a.m. to noon. Dr. Kolbaba, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Nice to be with you, too. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Your angle of incidence here with respect to medical treatments is more of the natural treatments, very much like a conversation we had with a doctor last week about the nasal treatments to act as a preventative measure, a prophylactic measure. And so as you have seen this unfold over the last several weeks, what are some of the things that you've talked about and suggestions you've made in terms of how people should contemplate this?
Well, I know that we're all frustrated with what we can't do this, can't do that. And I'm all about what is it that we can do or we could have been doing all along. And so I would like to start with a couple premises. And I know you know this, but it's good to rejoin some points. It's not just one factor that we get ourselves infected or affected by any disease or condition, and it's not going to be one factor that's restorative of wellness or curative for any disease, condition, or infection. And then the second point I want to make to start us out is that it's my belief, and I believe it's proved out by science too, that all disease entities, especially infections of every type, they're predacious. They pick on the young, old, weak, and slow. And these two premises, they're there, whether it's known to us or not. They're in force. And at this particular point, we know the demographic is old and pre-existing. And so if I could share a couple of things today for what we could do to, if we can, build or support our immune system, because 75% of our immune system, for instance, is located in our gut. So how many of us overeaters, obesity being what it is, some of the diseases we have today that we didn't have even 100, 150 years ago, the contributing factor is, let's say, the stress that's on our gut where this immune response mechanism is located.
And so, so thinking about sort of medium term to long term, better dieting, exercise when you're allowed to come out of your house again, if you can't exercise inside your home. But in terms of how people should think about approaching this based on the foundation you've laid, thinking about things in addition to social distancing, what's sort of the strategic approach you would recommend?
I'm thinking do more, do less, so you give people the option. So, for instance, instead of telling us what we don't want to do, and I understand mitigation and quarantine and such, but doing more means move, as you mentioned, discharge energy. It's more than moving. When you discharge energy, it's more stimulatory to your body's basal metabolic rate. And remember I said weak, old, young, and slow. most of us are obese, so our metabolism at rest is slower than it needs to be. Number two, drink more water. Most of us in this country are dehydrated, and we misdiagnose that and think we're hungry, and so we eat. What are we doing during the time at home? I'm sensing that more of us are eating more, not less. And then get in bed, stay in bed, minimum of 7 hours. Stay in bed, whether you sleep or not, and don't bring your iPhone with you. Put it in another room. Continue to take any high-quality vitamin supplement that you are committed to. Get back to green vegetables, things like that. And some of the don't do, or I would say do less, has a lot to do with things that we're doing more of these days when we're quarantined, such as lowering alcohol consumption, eating less food, as you said, but also eating less processed food, and maybe start making a couple meals from scratch. Lower
We have
caffeine
time.
intake.
Well, Dr. Kolbaba, what about our mental health during this time? I mean, it's really, I don't think a lot of people have experienced anything like this before, and hopefully we never will have to again. But any suggestions on that and how it relates to our physical health?
Absolutely. That's why I mentioned what is it that we can do, Amy? What is it that we can do where we're feeling like we're controlling? When we're doing something, it creates a different plethora of hormones than when we angst about something. So, for instance, when we take things in like alcohol and caffeine, what we're doing is stimulating the hormones that we make in response to a stress. If we're listening to too much of the news, which is fairly well dramatic, that ups that hormone, that cortisol, that then shuts us down. And then we get that malaise, and we're more prone to drink more alcohol and watch more TV and kind of cuddle, with our pillow. And I'm just saying that if we could just get out and discharge more energy, let's say. And it's good to share things, but I know that when people are sharing things with their friends and neighbors these days, it's more of a worrisome sharing. So mental health is a big deal for those of us who have shared faith. I think it's time for us to put that on the block and see what we can do with the one above. But I think a big part of us discharging energy by using the movement that was made for us in history past, I think that would do us whole bunches of good.
Yeah, that's a good point about sort of mental attitude that drives physical health decisions too, in a good way or a bad way. You talk about alcohol consumption and things like that. That makes a lot of sense. What about in terms of trying to do things that are stimulative intellectually, so that you don't fall into the doldrums that you're describing, with maybe things you haven't done in a while because you haven't had the time, not just binge watching everything that the streaming services have to offer, but reading, or just taking a quiet moment to listen to music or other things like that.
No, Dan, I totally agree with you, and I think that we could get the dust off the cover and get to some book we've been wanting to get to without having to, share time with our family using some kind of screen like a TV. And I wanted to mention too, of course, this would be under direction of your doctor, but immunosuppressants. When we think about what is it that we're doing that can lower our body's response to these infections, a lot of us are already doing it. And I was wanting to list something for you really simply about all the immunosuppressant drugs that people are taking right now in our country. The United States makes up less than 5% of the world's population, but we're using over 85% of the world's medication. Now what that really, boils down to is that you got 95% of the world's population only using 15% of the world's medication, and 30 other countries are living longer than we are. So they're probably reading books. They're probably doing other things than we are doing. So you might want to have a talk with your doctor or doctors who are administering some of these medications. And I'm not anti-medication. I'm anti what we're doing with it in this country, which is immunosuppressant. And then add the alcohol, the caffeine, add the overeating. Every one of these elements we just talked about all suppress or repress our body's immune response. And again, I'd repeat, 75% of our body's response to infections happens to be in our gut, the gateway from the outside world into our body. And you can sit there and say that if I could do some of these things, discharge the energy, get back to some of the books, get back with my family in a more meaningful way, get back in contact with the one above, add these things together. I want to say when you're using a nutritional approach, a holistic approach, all of these elements are important to work together. That makes them all stronger synergistically.
You know, it's an interesting point you raise about big pharma, effectively, because prior to this, over the last 10 years, there has been any number of documentaries about how many Americans are part of the sort of therapeutic state, both sort of literally and figuratively, or abstractly and concretely. How many, and particularly younger people too. I mean, kids in school too, and how sort of medicating them as a first response to any behavioral disruption or behavioral incident and so forth. And I wonder if, we talk a lot about what's a post-COVID-19 world going to look like, and what are the conversations we're going to have anew or revisit. And it seems to me one is the ubiquity of pharmaceuticals and their use in American society.
I think we're being led into that, and those of us who can't get it from our doctor, Dan, we get it at the over-the-counter remedy, or we go to the liquor store, or we get immersed in something that we all accept, and that's the TV watching, where we get a chance to watch the pharmaceuticals dancing in front of us with some sexy, middle-aged person on the beach somewhere. And again, I'm not anti-drug, I'm anti-antibiotic. It's just that the overuse drives me crazy, and it's driving our body's own immune response mechanism. And if you could imagine, let's just say that taking an immunosuppressant drug, and I'm saying some common conditions are being treated with these immunosuppressant drugs, like systemic lupus, ulcerative colitis, hair loss, organ transplant, anemia, colorectal cancer, Hodgkin's, inflammatory bowel disease. Many of these drugs you see advertised on TV are immunosuppressant. That means if that's worth a -30, and then you're obese, that's -30, and you happen to be of a certain age, that's -30. And let's say you require a -30 to, let's say, be infected by the coronavirus. That means I'm presupposing that you have that vulnerability, that susceptibility, before you're out of the gate.
Very interesting. He is Dr. David Kolbaba, Clinic Director at Quest for Health and host of Healthquest Radio, Chicago's longest-running health news and science show, which airs on our station, these airwaves, Saturdays, 11 a.m. to noon, 560 The Answer, 560theanswer.com. Dr. Kolbaba, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thanks. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Balance of nature. Changing the world, one life at a time.
Every year I go in and see my doctor. She says, whatever I'm doing, it's working.
Just had my physical, and the doctor says, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. So
my primary doctor